We are live. Good evening, ladies and gents. To start with, we're going to be just a little run through of the prizes. So today we are going to draw the winner for the May members. Is that right?
Yeah, all of the May members. So if you were a member during May, then you've got a chance of winning one of the 3 sets of these lovely presentation sets.
They are very nice indeed. 3 heads with a receiver, 3 individual winners. We will draw them this evening. Also, the main purpose of the live videos is to do an interactive Q&A to talk about our latest films, future films, or anything just carp fishing related. And when we get a good question that we like, we're going to give away a free tub of these exclusive mainline banoffee pop-ups. You can't buy them. You can buy banoffee pop-ups, but not in white. These were made specially for us to a little recipe that I've caught loads and loads of big fish on. We're going to give these away for good questions.
As some of you will see, we have changed the setup slightly. I thought rather than me having my back to you, felt a little bit rude at times, but we've got some nice new microphones. So hopefully people can hear us all right. If you can't, let us know. It looks like the levels are all right. But should we get a little question in? So some people have sent questions in before the live. I'm going to try and read this one from the email, the very small text. But it's from Patrick. So he says, I watch the Peckers Techers about zig fishing, and I love everything on CarpFix. So that's good. That's a good start. I wanted to ask a question. I use zigs a lot. The lake I fish at the moment has started. The lake I fish at the moment, I started using them, but because of the depth, I can only use adjustable zigs. It's 52 foot, so impossible to use a zig with the magnet. The only problem is the zig tangled all the time, and when fishing at range, because of the ripples in the in the water from the wind, I can't see the adjustable come up in the water. Are there any tips or tricks I can use?
Okay, so the adjustable zig rig, it's going to have to be, if it's that deep, you're not going to be able to use a normal conventional zig rig. They're not the best for long range casting, so I don't know exactly how far you want to cast. I have fished adjustable zig rigs up to 100 yards, so 25 wraps. I've not really tried to fish them any further than that. And to be able to cast an adjustable zig rig 25 wraps, you're going to need to be a pretty good caster anyway, because they're just not very aerodynamic. The most important bit is doubling back your hook link. You're going to want your hook link off the top of the float. I like it from the roller on the reel to the second eye on my rod. So not to the butt ring, to the next one. But it's just important that you know exactly how long that hook link is, which I will come to in a minute. Your hook link is attached to the swivel at the top of the float. It's then doubled back on itself, and using a foam nugget, you lick and stick that to the outside of the adjustable zig float. You fish that on a running lead, and then you're going to cast that out into the lake. You can sink your line before you pop it to the surface, and when you pop it to the surface, I tend to let mine up slowly. I don't want the float to overtake the hook bait, because I think that can cause tangles. If it's the float's racing up from the depths, big buoyant float, there's a chance, I'm not saying definitely, but there's a chance that could overtake the hook bait, which could end up in tangles. So slowly let it to the surface. And you say you can't see it because of ripples on the water. The next thing to take into account, the line will stop peeling off the reel when it hits the surface. So if you can't see it, wait for it to stop peeling off the reel, place the rod in the rest, and you should be able to gauge by the tension as you take the line back on when the float submerges. I've done it in the dark, recasting. Obviously, it's not ideal. In an ideal world, you'll see your float submerge, but you can sort of do it by feel. You feel that sort of, it starts to get stiff as the buoyancy of the float is pulled beneath the surface, and then obviously you work it down the exact length of the hook link. You need to measure that before you put it out. So let's just say it's 3 foot long, 4 foot long. You're going to pull 4 foot down onto the reel, then you're going to know the hook bait is on the surface, and from there you're free to work it down 1 foot at a time. I think it's much better to work it down from the surface as opposed to do it from the bottom. But yeah, foam nugget, doubled over hook link, and you shouldn't have any problem with tangles.
Lovely. I think we should give Patrick, just for making the effort, because he emailed this a little while ago.
Yeah,
we'll give him a little tub of pop-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be...
one down.
Be rude not to. Do you want to do the announcement for...
Next month?
This month's giveaway now. It's June, isn't it? So
okay, yes. So June's members, everyone that's a member, an active member on the 30th of June, the last day of June, will automatically be entered into next month's prize draw. And this month we've got 5 winners again, and they will each win themselves a 5 kilo bag of krill active freezer bait in 16mm. They will win themselves a krill active tough ones in 16mm. They will win themselves some krill active wafters in 16mm, some peach and pepper pop-ups in 12mm, some peach and pepper bait spray, and some pure cannelonus. Is that how you say it? Cannelonus?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. It's this here, anyway.
Yeah, calanus.
Yeah, 500ml of that.
Basically, each prize is worth, I think, £90. It says
just short of 90.
Just short of £90. So 5 winners, which will be drawn on the live in June. We've got. Is this part of it?
No, so that we have some stuff on the side that you can't see. There, that's another giveaway.
Ooh,
yeah. So
a little bit of sticky going on.
Yeah.
There.
So I think the stuff that Darrell's just read out.
Yeah.
I can get Tom to go into a bit more detail on those products next week. So as some of you, I mean, hopefully you're not too disappointed, but Tom was meant to be here tonight, but we've had to we've had to reschedule. So he's coming over here next Wednesday, and I'm sure we can get him to run through some of those and the best times to use them.
Yeah, lovely job.
So let's just look at the ones on the actual website. A question on there. Let's get one on here. So Daniel Short has asked, "Hi guys, would love to know your thoughts approach on cray-infested waters. Current lake I'm on has around 100 carp in 60 acres with 60 million crayfish.
60.
Good. Yeah, nights are really bad, but daytime they're not as active. Any advice appreciated. Thanks for the top content."
Top content. Well, it's all about the content, isn't it? Right, crayfish. I'm going to be frank and say that I have never really personally fished anywhere that's infested. I fished a little bit at Burfield and had a few nibbles. We've had a few nibbles recently at Wasing on the pop-up that have been in the water 2 days. But I haven't actually fished anywhere personally myself that's been infested. Speaking to people, I know lots of people that do. And if they are really, really that bad, then the best way to go is to fish rubber on the hook. Because ultimately, once the crayfish have got hold of your hook bait, they are nibbling it away, so you might end up with no bait on. They could also damage the hook. They can drag your rig off into weed and make it ugly. So realistically, you want them to come across a rubber hook bait, realise that it isn't food, and move on to the free offerings. And that way that your rig stays untampered with, in tip-top condition. And as long as you keep topping the feed up around it, so like just keep constant feed trickling over, I think tigers would be one of my opening. I use tigers all the time, as you probably, if you watch this regularly, you'll know. So you're using tigers, fishing rubber, and stay away from the fishy stuff. Real fishy stuff is terrible for crayfish. So like fish meal boilies, pellets, those sorts of things are really bad for drawing crayfish in. Go for the more cereal or more sort of vegetable matter sort of baits, and fish rubber on the hook. That'd be my advice.
When I was I used to film with Danny Fairbrass quite a lot, and at Gigantica, those of you who've been there before, there are loads of crayfish, and when we were there, I mean, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but he used to crush the crayfish
and use them as bait.
So if potentially, if you've got that opportunity, he caught loads of fish off it doing it. He just mixed
yeah.
it with maize and stuff and put it out in his spawn, and he was bagging up.
It's real, you know. You can't beat real food, and those crayfish will be reproducing in the lake, and those fish will definitely be eating the smaller ones and the younger ones, especially the big fish. You know, I've seen it in European fishing magazines, like big carp, like passing whole claws, you know, coming out the back end. So yeah, the big carp will definitely eat crays, but if they're 20 pounders and that, and the crays are big, then I think the carp will be just as scared of the crays.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for that one. So Daniel Stanford has asked, evening fellas, is there a best setting to be on when using a camera? So I did ask if this is for photo or video, and he has confirmed it's photo. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you prefer to use? Because you've done an awful lot of self-takes. And
yeah, it seems silly me answering because you're a professional cameraman and I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer from my point of view, like personally, if you're taking stills, if you've got a fixed lens on, so a prime lens, so it's not a zoom lens, then you will generally get a better photo.
Yeah.
So that is the first kind of general rule. Second general rule, I would say, is to keep your camera on aperture. So you're going to keep to a fixed aperture, and your camera will adjust its settings. So generally, I keep to, when I'm doing a wide shot of Darrell holding a fish, I might be on, say, I just want to make sure this camera's plugged in. 1 second.
One second.
Just carry on.
Yeah. So the f-stop is the aperture which Scott is referring to there, and it does depend if you're using a full frame or a crop sensor camera. We tend to shoot the cat shots when they're in landscape mode on a full frame at 3.5. You get fish sharp, face pretty sharp, background out of focus. If you're going to use a crop sensor, you might want to go, you probably go a little bit lower, perhaps, not a lot, maybe 3.2. But yeah, the other thing, the main thing that transformed my own photography was to learn about setting the focus point to single point, because most of the automatic modes on cameras fire out a burst of focus points, and then the camera just picks one which lands, picks a focus point that lands, which is not ideal. You want to know what you're focusing on. So I always set my camera to single point focus. If I'm taking pictures of someone else, I focus on the face of the fish. If I'm taking self-takes, I focus on the middle of the fish just for safety. You can leave the ISO on automatic. You can leave the white balance on automatic, but the two things that will make the instant difference to your photography will make sure you're focused on the right thing to start with, and you're shooting with, obviously it's almost like a cat shot is almost like a portrait shot, shooting on sort of 3.5, 3.2, well, anywhere between 3.2 and 4, you should be good. That's what I would say.
Yeah, my camera's showing a low battery.
Watch this one.
I don't know why it is. Not too sure.
Is it plugged into the mains?
It is, yeah.
That's strange.
I'll do another question, and I'll try and work out what the problem is.
You're just going to disappear again.
Jamie has asked, been using size 6 Kamakura cranks for 2 years, but have recently started fishing at weedier water and have had a few hook pulls. I'm switching to hand-sharpened crank X's, but there is some debate on Instagram. Some feel any sharpened hooks lead to more lost fish. What do you think?
Well, I think it does depend on how hard you're going to need to pull during the fight. Danny Fairbrass, he said to me that when he's fishing in thick weed or fishing to snags, that he feels that you're better off with a non-sharpened hook. And recently at Wasing, I've been fishing to trees and stuff. And rather than, as I showed in Peckers Teckers, I've been a hook sharpener for a long time, and I plane the front edge of the hook normally. But now, when in a hit and hold situation where I'm really going to be putting some serious pressure on, I now don't use the SP Max file for that. I just use the stone, like the little green, the finest stone that Jag do, and I just do the inner side of the point, just a real gentle, just running the point along the. So it's almost, if that's the file, I lay the hook point on top of it and just drag it back on the inside a few times, check it with the eyepiece, and you are right. You get less hook sliding in the mouth without, if you sharpen a plane on the front of it, and you are hit and holding, there is a chance for the hooks to slide. So yeah, if you are going to be putting a lot of force on, then perhaps don't be planing the front face of the hook all the way down to nothing.
Nice.
Any more, lad?
Yeah, I got loads.
Loads.
Ben has asked
Actually, I like that question. He can have a tub of pop-ups.
Jamie, yeah?
Yeah, he can have a tub.
Let me just...
Because it is important, if you are going to be fishing for fish and you are pulling hard, you don't want to be ripping their mouths apart. And they definitely do cut a little bit when you really sharpen them down.
Yeah. So this is from Ben. My lake is closed due to fish spawning. I think this is a good thing. What are your thoughts on it? Would you still fish or pack up and go home? I mean, that's probably a pretty straightforward one for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I've fished on loads of waters where people have stayed on, and I've stayed on myself to sort of watch the ritual unfold and then fish afterwards, because quite often on the real low stock lakes, they come into parts of the lake and you're never going to get that opportunity to see them very much. But actively fishing for spawners, is no good, absolutely. It's a non-starter. It's not ideal, and certainly not recommended.
No. So Charlie has asked, I have issues feeling the lead down sometimes. I struggle to maintain contact with the lead when it hits the water. Do you have any tips that could help?
Yeah, but it's all going to be practice. The deeper the water and the shorter range you're fishing, the easier it is to practice. The more range that you're casting, the further you're casting, and the shallower the water, the more difficult it becomes. And then you add in wind, which can make it even more difficult. So for practicing, you want to start at short range in deeper water, and as you get better at it, you're going to be able to do it further out. But what my advice would be to do is to use a line clip and get used to anticipating when you're going to hit the line clip, so that you can feather it in. So what I mean by that, as it hits the clip, you sort of cushion the weight of the lead hitting the water, so it's not dropping out the sky. That way you're staying in contact with it as it hits the water. At that point, be quick to bring the rod tip up, and that's how you feel it down in shallow water at longer distances. You need to stay in contact as it hits the clip rather than it drop out the sky. It will take practice, you're not going to go on a golf course and drive 300 yards first time you go, and you're not going to be able to feel it down in 4 foot of water at 100 yards the first time you go carp fishing. It is practice. You have to learn and get good at that.
Yeah. David Hastings has asked, hi Darrell and Scott, can you describe your fish care procedure to ensure fish safety once they are on the bank?
There's lots of little things that can go wrong, lots and lots of little things. So the first thing that you'd have seen in all the DVDs, we always go on about putting them in the retention sling rather than in the net. That is important. If you can, unhook them. Sometimes if they're being well behaved, unhook them before you bring them on the bank. But another thing to make sure is when you roll the net down or you roll the sling down, that you're not rolling the line in, so that you could be rolling that line up tight and dragging the hook out. Another thing that can happen is the hook can come through the lip and go into the net. Very normal thing to happen. That hook's pierced all the way through the lip, especially with a barbed hook, goes into the mesh, fish then tugs, rips the hook, because the net's tough, rips the hook out of the lip. So look out for things like that. Obviously, when you're going to lift them to the bank, make sure that the fins are flat to the body. I try not to have the fish on their so all of their weight on their tummies. I try to have them on their flank, because they're soft on the underside, and I don't want, especially a big fish, I really don't like to see those mat shots where people have the fish up on their tummy, so the fish is like tummy on the mat. It's, in my opinion, not the best thing to be doing. On the bank, if there's damage to the hook, like to the mouth, that you think's worth treating, then treat that, obviously to the scales as well. But yeah, they're the real basics, and just be prepared to lower the fish to the mat if it flaps, rather than fight the flapping. Just try and just cushion that if a fish starts flapping, cushion them to the mat, and just concentrate. It's especially if you've got a big audience of people all talking. That's very easy to get way in the moment and that. But when you're holding that fish, it's up to you to show it the respect it deserves and make sure that it goes back in as good a condition as it possibly can. So there'd be my top tips.
Sweet. Barry Jarvis, evening guys.
Hang on, that fish
Good
care,
evening.
fish care's
Good
pop-ups.
evening, Barry. Fish care, yeah.
Yeah, he got his pop-ups.
Okay, Dave. Let me just write his name down. I've got his name. So, Jonathan has said, #legend. Well done, Mr. Peck, on Oxley's banging fish 3 of the biggest. Get in there.
It's not a question, is it?
No,
it's
it's
just
not.
like a high five.
High
five.
Fish pump emoji,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
they are. John Long, hi all. What would your baiting approach be after the fish have spawned? Would you change the type of bait used in application? Keep up the great work. Tight lines.
Yeah, I think if you're ever going to feed like amounts of bait post spawning is one, not always, but in every situation, because carp fishing can be very varied. But I've often done very well post spawning using more bait than normal, spomming, hemp, party blend, tigers, boilie crumb. Yeah, I just find you can get away with. Do you know when they're all empty, like all the fish that you know what they weigh normally, suddenly they're like 6-7 pounds, especially like 40 pounders that have dropped 10 pound, 30 pounders that have dropped 7 pound. When you're fishing for fish that have lost that much weight, they tend to be, especially when the water's warm. When the water's warm, they are more prone to eating. This is a common misconception is that you need low pressure conditions to catch carp or feed a lot of bait. But when the water's hot, especially in the summer post spawning, then they tend to be a bit more prone to a bit of bait and a bit of particle, tigers, boilies, whatever it is you're going to use. But I never go mad. I don't know any lake where rocking up and putting 10 key out the second you get there is the way to go. I've tried it loads of times because you always think more bait equals more fish. But a normal bait up for me is 6 to 8 spoms. A decent, a heavier, medium bait up for me is 15, 20 spoms. And when I think they're really having it, 30, 40 spoms. That's the sort of numbers we're talking.
Nice. So I've switched back to the website now. So I'm on like the live chat.
Yeah.
Before I was on the comments, where people from like the app can leave a comment. So I've switched back for a little bit. So Robert Collins has asked, depending on the wind pressure, is it better to fish on the back of the wind or on the front?
Yes, it's a very common question, that, and again, very dependent on venues. When I fished at St Ives years ago, fish were always on the back of the wind, if the sun was out especially, and when I fished at Collinbrook, they were on the end of the wind, whichever degree it changed. If it changed for an hour, they would follow it. So it is very venue dependent, and it can also be season dependent, and it can be depth dependent, but you just have to notice what the fish in your venue tend to do, because they will show patterns. Although I can say I follow the wind in the summer, get on the back of it in the winter. So I know some lakes where they follow it in the winter. I know some lakes when on the back of it in the summer when it's sunny. So you just need to pay attention when you do see fish to the conditions and what they seem to like to do, and that is more important than just guessing. It's showing a reason. Knowing why they do certain things.
So one of our American friends, Peter Cockle, is in Arizona. Have a guess.
I'm sure he had a book off me.
Yeah, possibly. He's bought a bit of merch from us. He's been a very good supporter of old Peter. So he guess what the temperature is in Arizona.
40
Celsius. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pretty much there.
What is it?
It's like 39 to 42.
Yeah, that's too hot. Whenever it's over 25, as a half a Scotsman, I'm uncomfortable.
40 degrees.
You can't breathe when it's 35 plus, can you?
No.
It's literally so hot that you can't do
But
anything.
he has asked a question. Have you ever fished in 100-degree weather, obviously Fahrenheit? Any recommendations for me?
Well, the only place I fished, you were there when we fished in, do you remember for Monster Carp when we filmed in Austria?
Yeah.
well, I went there twice.
Yeah,
Once
that
on a
was hot.
recce session, and it was 30 odd every day, 35.
You were
sort of thing.
jumping in the lake, weren't you?
Yeah, swimming in it, and
Yeah.
there was
Go a little bit
sorry,
closer.
there was like hot air, sort of hot water pockets as you were swimming through the lake. But again, it fished its absolute head off. We were catching loads of fish because they were absolutely starving.
Yeah, yeah. It was right next to the mountains, wasn't it? It's
Yeah.
nice.
Beautiful place.
So, was there any advice in that?
Well, no, I've just found that when the water's warm like that, like they eat a lot. You
Yeah.
know, like when I fished in Italy in temperatures like that, and you'd think as well, you'd always think they'd be up on the surface because in the UK, when it gets warm, the fish tend to come to the surface. But when you fish in countries like that where the water gets so hot, I find they go deep to get away from the sun, and they're ravenous.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so I would just say don't worry about fishing deep when it's red hot like that, and don't worry about fishing over quite a bit of bait.
Yeah. Richard's asked about fishing after approach to fishing a lake after they've just spawned. I think we covered it a little bit, did we? Did we cover that?
We just talked about it. Someone asked about feeding, about the feed and stuff.
Yeah, so that kind of...
Well, you can talk. Another thing to look out for would be what the fish are doing. Are they sitting up in snags? Because on some lakes that I've seen in high summer, post spawning, fish laying up in the day in an area and then moving elsewhere to feed at night. So you could see them all sitting in a wee bed, set your traps up around that or some trees, and then following morning when it's bite time, 4 or 5 o'clock, they're 500 yards away on the other side of the lake, boshing out. So it's finding post spawning, finding where the feeding grounds are, not where the sun base. Sometimes they can be very close together, but other times they can travel long distances under the cover of darkness to where they want to feed and then come back. So yeah, that would be. You don't just think that because they're sat in the wee bed or sat in the snags, that's where they're going to feed. You need to watch where they're jumping at dawn. That's very, very important.
Should we do a draw for the a couple of the alarms?
Yeah. These are nice, aren't they?
They're really nice. They're
Nice price, that.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I was out filming with Tom the other week, and you know he was using the set, and they're just good all round alarms.
That bite he had that was on the trailer was just it was the textbook bite, as in beer. Yeah,
they're decent alarms, you know, for the money. I think they retail at $250, which for 3 alarms and a receiver, you know, when I started fishing, I always wanted a receiver. I remember actually having, you remember those chub sounder things, like they gave off. They had I think Fox did them as well actually. We were on a long cable, but I had this chub thing that was like an old school box, and it used to give me a signal as to when I had a bite. I don't know, I can't remember how it worked, but it was hilarious. I think that like it lit up or something. I don't know. Yeah, but it was right. So giveaway. So I've just dropped a little box on there. Look, so we're going to do it slightly different just to streamline it a bit. Yeah. So Craig is obviously is just a name that's just appeared at the start. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto the website. I'm going to press this rerun button, and then it'll just generate a name.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Everyone's names are in there. Those of you who've seen this before, you'll have seen that we do have everyone's name in there. So if you remember during May, annual members and 6 month members, you're all in there. So you've all got a chance to win. So let's press the first one, shall we?
Darrell Peck.
Yeah, you are officially a member on there, so you could
maybe
up.
One day it might come up, mightn't it?
So Daniel Hitchens. The reason I've got their full name and the little number by the side is there are some people that have the same name on the system. So just by having that number, it makes sure that I don't have 2 winners with the same name, basically. So let's do the other one, shall we?
So Daniel who was it?
Daniel Hitchens has won himself a set just for being a member.
Just for being a member. Can't beat that, can you?
No. And Wesley Skeels.
Wesley Skeels. Well done. I wouldn't mind a set of them.
Let's do another one later.
One more at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right. Let me just go back onto this other screen. Right.
We've still got lots of pop-ups to give away.
Yeah. Mike Forster has asked, any tips on using an aquascope in windy conditions when using a boat?
I've got to be honest. I've got about 4 aquascopes. Every time me and Danny go boat fishing, he buys me an aquascope because he thinks I haven't got one. So they keep stockpiling in my garage, and there's a few back at Corder HQ. And if I can't see it with my glasses, I tend not to use it. I've used a viewing thing a few times, but I haven't got any tips for it. I'm being honest. I've not something that I've used. I've dunked it in the water, probably looked through one half a dozen times, and I've never felt the need or the necessity. I generally see it with the glasses, lower it down like that. But if I was campaign fishing, then I would maybe anchor off if you really wanted to look at something meticulously. But sorry, I haven't got any tips for that.
Yeah, well, you'll have to go somewhere else for some advice.
Yeah, it's not mine.
Yeah, not your forte.
No.
Okay. I mean, you're not going to know everything, are you?
It's just not something that I've ever felt the need to do. If I've found that if I can't see it with my glasses, then the aquascope's not going to help me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just that's how I've found it.
So Darren has asked, Darren Saxby, any thoughts on foam not coming off and taking ages to dissolve? Has seen something by another top angler saying they can take up to an hour. I use foam every cast pretty much.
Well, I only use foam nuggets when I'm bait boat fishing or for zig rig on the adjustable floats. They're the only 2 times that I use nuggets. I used to call dissolvable foam noddy foam because I used to look at it as like people being uncertain about their rigs tangling or settling or something. And I say that jokingly when I say noddy foam, as in I'm confident in the way I cast that it's not tangling and that it's presented well. With regards to it not coming off, you want fresh foam, as in you don't want stuff that's been sat on and squished. So you want a nice, fresh piece that hasn't been subjected to moisture, because if the bag gets left open and it gets damp, it doesn't melt as quickly. I cut my foam nuggets in half lengthways, so basically you're getting half thickness, and I lick a tiny bit, wrap around the shank, and just gently squeeze on the point, and then hold. So I'm not fully compressed it, just a slight compression, so it's holding together and just allow it to bind. Sometimes it comes off really quickly, like within you drop the lead out the bait boat, it just comes up instantly. Other times you don't even see it come off because it's breaking down underwater. But I test it in the edge, and I've never found it to be not coming off. It might stay on there 5 minutes, but 5 minutes in the grand scheme of things when you're big carp fishing is not a long time. But my advice would be to use fresh stuff, make sure it's not subjected to moisture beforehand, and do not squeeze it on too tight. But obviously I'm not casting it out there. It might go like the way I sort of squeeze it on there for the bait boat probably could come off in the wind, or during the cast, because it's really only it's lightly nicked on there to stop it catching the bait boat hopper on the way out.
Okay. Yeah. So Alfie is asked, why are choddies known for singling out big carp, and what makes so particular? At doing this?
I just think it's an old thing that people have been saying for years, that tall pop-ups catch big carp. As in, you have to, like, they can be too crude for a small carp. Let's say like a big pop-up, it just gets ignored, and then the big fish just comes in and ploughs it up. And you've seen that in the underwater film, when Elliot puts on the stiff rig for Dan and catches the big common. Loads and loads and loads of fish avoiding the rig, and then the last minute, just as the rig's about to get wound in, the big common just comes in and ploughs it up. But in the same breath, I've caught loads of small fish on pop-ups, so that there's as much truth in it as there isn't. Choddies, they don't necessarily single out bigger fish. They might sort of put off the smaller ones, potentially the real small ones, but I've caught small fish on choddies and I've caught big fish on choddies. I wouldn't overthink that.
Is it true you're actually a trawler?
Am I actually a trawler?
Yes. Ben has asked.
Yeah. Well, you can have a pop-up.
Really? Ben, I haven't got your surname.
Ben,
I've got Ben.
Ben, you've just got some pop-ups. Oh,
Ben
you're a trawler.
E, but I still won't know who you are. So just email info@CarpFix.tv and we'll get you some.
They obviously they're referring to the wazing fish that we've caught recently on camera.
Yeah.
You got to be straight. As we said in the previous live, that we would love to go and try build a campaign and build towards catching one UK 50-pounder by design, and by fishing a lake that had 3 fish around that size. If you get a few bites on a low stock lake like that, the odds of one of them being one of those fish is reasonably high. But to catch the 3 biggest fish in the lake out of 5 bites, that's a stretch by that. There's some good fortune in there. Yeah. But luckily Scott was there with a camera.
Yeah,
he was.
So Owen has asked, hi Pecky, congrats on the recent captures. How does your baiting approach change after spawning? So he's also said the lake manager on my syndicate has put 150 kilos of pellet in the lake opens next week. 12-acre lake with 180 carp. So what would you do in that situation?
Well, if they're getting fed that pellet, like fish do respond. If they're getting mass baited on something, they will tune into it. When you go to Parco di Brenta in Italy, they've got what they call the house pellet, their local pellet that they feed. And the fish are super tuned to that. So I would definitely consider using that. But I would also have an alternative, because if everyone's doing the same thing, sometimes it's not. I don't know what the bait rules. I'm guessing tigers are banned because they're banned everywhere. But tigers are one of my favourite baits at all times, especially in the summer. They're at their very, very best in the summer. So if tigers are allowed and everyone's fishing pellet, that would be a nice little side try. But yeah, don't ignore the house pellets, because if they are tuned to them, then it could be worth getting on them.
Cool. Jamie has said, not really a question, but you guys are brilliant. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Jamie. So Phil has asked a question about distance sticks wrapping up. He said, whenever I wrap up anything over 15 wraps, I always end up getting tangled. Can you give me any advice to help me improve?
I'm going to answer it in 2 ways, because I don't know if he means getting tangled off the sticks or tangled on the cast. So if you're coming off the sticks, just make sure that you reel it through your hands as you're taking it off, to keep a nice, not just reel it on the reel handle, hold the line against the rod, and you keep the tension from the hand to the reel the same, because that's important to keep a nice even distribution of the line across the spool. And another thing, when I'm fishing really far out, especially with tapered line, I've found that I get the odd frap up when I'm really blasting it when I've come off the sticks. And in that situation, I make a 50, 60 yard cast, just a little lob, reel it in with a rod tip under the water, quite often the butt ring, just so that the rings are all nicely lubricated and the line's gone onto the reel nicely. And I find that helps to prevent it. But the biggest thing will be to make sure that when you're winding off the sticks, that you're winding the line in under tension. And if you also do not put it around the stick, I'm not saying you are, but don't put it around the sticks on the clutch. The clutch is a carp angler's enemy. If obviously for a fish, that's great, you're going to play them in on the clutch, but you shouldn't be playing around pulling line off the clutch left, right and centre, because every single time that spool does an oscillation, it puts a rotation of twist into your line. So avoid pulling line off the clutch at all costs unless you're playing a fish.
Yeah. Some people have said there's a low battery warning flashing on the camera.
Warning!
Which unfortunately I can't get rid of. It's just above your head.
I can see it. I'm
Can you see it?
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it. I'd have to take the battery out, which will probably turn the camera off, but it's plugged in. So I'm just not going to touch it. So apologies.
That's my battery warning.
Yeah. Yeah. We're wearing out.
Wearing out. It's been a busy spring.
Yeah. So we've got one from Mickey Cork has asked, Hi guys, Darrell. What's the best piece of angling you've seen by a fellow angler, and even thought to yourself,
Oh, that's
"Wow,
pop-ups.
that was pretty good."
Oh, I've seen loads of good ones, but he's definitely getting a ton of pop-ups.
It's a little bit different, that question.
Yeah, in the big carp story that we've just filmed this week, one occasion that sticks in my mind, fishing at St Ives Lagoon. Hadn't never met this guy previously, so I'm fishing in a swim called the Beach. And he's fishing in a swim opposite me called Dave's. He's sort of walking between the two swims. Suddenly, like without warning, I see him start packing up. He moves half a mile around the lake, maybe more, maybe 1,000 metres around the lake. Within 5 minutes so 1 minute he's looking, within 5 minutes he's rolling on the barra. He came past me, set up in a swim, so he's anticipating where he's seeing his fish from the other side, flung out a rig, and caught one within about 10 minutes, half an hour, something like that. And I just remember at the time thinking, yeah, that's
pretty solid.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And another time, I remember the one that shook me as a younger lad when I was in my mid-20s, fishing at Coninbrook. There's a guy called his name will come to me in a minute, but I called him in my book. I called him the Heron. He wouldn't like. I was stubborn and would always sit it out through the tough times, where the Heron would only come when it was on. You know, he'd come in the spring and he'd come in the autumn, in September, and he'd avoid the downtime. But I remember just waking up at dawn and he stood there in his waders in the lake. He's already there as the light's turning. I can't believe it. I'm waking up at the crack of dawn, having a cup of tea, watching. He's out there in his waders, and he just never moved from the water's edge, just looking, you know, just so intent on seeing one show that he, just by being like that, was intimidating me, making me feel guilty for looking down at my cup to stir my tea. You know, that's the level of intensity that he put on the water, and that is what separates the really, really good anglers is the intensity that they can maintain. Because if you're that intense, then you tend to burn out. So yeah, it's the intensity that impresses me the most.
Nice. Chase has asked, hi Darrell, when it comes to big fish water fishing, have you found a specific depth or features to be more productive? I guess that would depend on the time of year as well a little bit,
yeah,
wouldn't it?
You know,
and the lake.
And everyone's, you know, when like I always fish on the hard spots, right? 99% of the time, I'm looking for the hardest ground as close to where they're jumping or where they're sitting or where they want to be. So in the right depth. So the depth, you have to know which depth they want to be in. You know, recently we've been fishing at Wasing, a really deep lake. The kill depth has been 6 foot.
How deep was it, just to give them an idea?
A lot of the lake is sort of 20 plus. You know, some of it's 30, a lot of it's 12s. A lot of the shelves and some like the mid range on the shelf is like 10, 12s, and people talk about that. But the kill depth has been 12 foot, and that is, you know, it's one of the most important things is knowing what depth you need to be fishing at. And for me, the harder the spot, the better. You know, I was having this chat with Tom Stokes the other day. Like, good drops produce fish, and I've caught them on soft drops, but drops that leave a lasting impression on you, ones that shake you. You think, oh, God, that was a good one. They just have this uncanny knack of producing fish. And the ones that you go, that was all right, have this uncanny knack of not producing. So, yeah, people say, you got the cuter fish are in the silt. Rubbish. Stick it on a smackdown where the fish are at the right depth, and you're onto a winner.
Nice. So Tom Kent has asked, I may have missed why we can't live comment. So thought I'd try and get a question to you this way. You've done it exactly the right way, Tom. There is a little bit of a glitch when you're on the app. You have to minimise the video and then comment below the video, and then you can make a comment. He says, or he asks, do you have any plans for audio versions of your book? There is a massive market for it, and your big carp stories are fantastic to listen to when driving, so the books would be even better.
No, I've got, that sort of, I don't want to saturate, we're doing the big carp story, which is a long-winded, verbal story similar to the book, but you're getting the visuals. You don't have to see the visuals, but the big carp story is what it is, and although there is probably a market for an audio book, I'm not saying I'll never do it in the future, but I'll certainly see the runs of this book and the next one through on print before looking to do audio.
I think he's made a good point though, that and some people might not be aware of it, that on the app you can listen to the audio whilst you're driving.
Yes.
So you just you can minimise the close the app down, not fully, but like minimise it or whatever, get rid of it. Put your app, put your navigation on, and like you do with a podcast, and just listen to it.
Yeah, you can listen to a big carp story like a podcast on the app, can't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also nice to visualise it with the map. Do you know the map?
Yeah.
When I read a book and I want to feel like. If I listen to it as a podcast style like that, I'd want to watch it afterwards. I really took it in.
Yeah.
Because I'm like that. I want to feel it, not just hear it. I want to take a take on it.
Lee Bevan has asked, "Hi Darrell, when fishing the helicopter rig, forgetting about distance, would you use the smallest lead you can get away with, or the biggest?"
Well, it's more about. It's not to do with the helicopter rig. It's more to do with the situation. I think if I'm casting to fish, then I try to use a light lead. If I'm fishing to spots, where I'm marking, spomming and that, I tend to use a big lead, because if you're going to make the disturbance with a spom, etc., trying a few casts to get it where you want it, then I'd rather have that extra hooking potential. I like big lead these days. I'm sort of leaning more and more towards big leads, but when you're fishing out to jumping fish, or flicking out to little islands and trying to be discreet, then little leads are discreet, but big leads are better for hooking fish, no doubt.
Martin Hall has asked, "I'm fishing a lake that has a lot of zebra mussels. What line would you recommend to avoid cut-offs?"
Well, that's a good question. Let's have a little pop up.
Zebra mussel question, yeah.
Mussels. Let's talk about the old zebra mussels. I've not fished loads of lakes with zebra mussels, but the truth is they are so sharp that they will literally cut through anything that touches them. I remember fishing on the canal in Belgium, and I slid my back lead out, and it got caught on something, which everything in Belgium is just covered in zebra mussels. I went to give it just to flick my rod tip like that with 20-pound braid, and it just cut me off at the rod tip. I'd literally just cast out and just got cut off at the rod tip. So the truth is that you're not going to stop them cutting through you, but something with thick diameter will be less prone to it. And I would tend not to fish slack. If you've got zebra mussels and that out in the lake, I would fish tight lines to the rigs, but with a slacker clutch. And the reason for that is by fishing a tight line, you're keeping your line off of the bottom as much as possible, so less chance of encountering stuff. And I fish a slack clutch because it's when the line is pulled real tight under tension and it touches something, that's when the zebra cuts you. So I would fish tight lines, slack clutch, and not fully tighten into the run until I had the rod tip up and the line had a chance to pick up through the water. So yeah, they'd be my top tips. Thick mono as well, thick.
Christopher Durbins asked, "Have you ever fished the Albright knot? Have you ever had the Albright knot fail with only 4 turns? Also, would you use this in snaggy conditions or opt for a stronger rig?"
I think he's referring to the rig that we talk about in the Peckers Teckers. It's the rig that I'm using all the time lately at the moment. The Combi multi-rig. And it's 4 turns, but it's 4 turns of doubled over braid. So it's 8 turns. So I wouldn't use a 4-turn Albright knot with a single strand. I'm only using 4 turns with a doubled over piece. And I've seen loads of people on social media. Everyone wants to recreate a rig and put their own twist on it, right? So I say I use the inner braid from the coated dark matter. And the reason I use that, 2 reasons. One is it's stiff, and one is it's coarse. Coarse braid requires less turns. So if you swap out the braid that I'm using and put in some Supernatural or some dark matter standard braid, it's not as coarse, it's more smooth, and it's more prone to sliding with less turns. So 4 turns with doubled over coarse braid, and you're going to need more turns with a single filament or with a less coarse braid.
Nice. John Andrews has asked, "Hi guys, for the majority of your fishing, would you use mono, fluoro or braid?"
They've all got their place. Generally I try and fish fluoro. It's in the middle. Reduced stretch, sinks like a brick, doesn't cast as well as mono, but if you're fishing, like I tend to fish fluoro up to about 110. If I'm fishing more than 110, then I fish mono. When I'm fishing stupidly far out at Orient, I always fish braid. At Wasing recently, we've been fishing to like a far bank to trees, so I really need indication. I'm fishing like 120 yards ish, close to trees. Rod length away. If you're fishing 120 yards with mono with a tight line, by the time you've had a bleep, that fish could be in the trees. But with the braid, the second the lead moves off the bottom, you know about it. So I use braid when the indication or range is important, and I tend to use fluorocarbon for general stuff, mono for casting really far.
Cool. On the subject of hook baits, do you believe that balancing hook baits is unnecessary, or is something we can overdo, making them react unnaturally, or is this something we overdo?
I know what he's getting at, but like I literally cannot remember the last time I fished a straight bottom bait, and yet in my early days that's all I ever used. But I know what he's saying about wafting around all over the show, but I tend to have it so the hook's sitting on the bottom and the hook bait's hovering above it. So it still probably weighs the same, but the bait is slightly further off the bottom, just fractionally. So it's just more likely to be seen. And it just makes everything lead into the fish's mouth that much. It's almost like the bait's buoyant, the hook's heavy, and everything just goes in the correct passageway. So yeah, I know what you're saying. You don't want your rig hovering and bouncing around and stuff, but I think a degree of buoyancy to a hook bait is an edge, and I think it helps with the hooking mechanics.
Craig's left a nice message. He said, Darrell, just a big thank you for sharing your combi multi-rig. Just returned from Sandhurst, where I had 15 bites and landed 15 fish, including 530s and my first English 40.
Oh, tub of pop-ups for the lads.
That's got to be a tub of pop-ups.
Well done. 530s and a 40 from 15 fish out of Sandhurst. You bad man.
100% record.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's that rig is. There's something about it. If you get those measurements right, sort of 3.5 centimeters on the braided section, and you use a size 6 wide gape and you use a semi-buoyant bait, that for some reason it just hooks them really, really well. And a load of people have said to me, like, I preferred the old Darrell Peck that used real simple rigs, right? He's only using that because he's trying to sell us something, and that is utter garbage. The main reason for using a more complicated rig is because now that I can quick change the hook, I want to use those mechanics that are all working for me, but I could never warrant it for the amount of time and hook changes. But now with that rig, I can, and it's not for every situation, but that if you're fishing on a hard spot with a semi-buoyant bait, that you're gonna do well to find a better rig than that. I've been fishing 20, 30 years, and there ain't much to beat that.
Yeah. Kieran Kenny's asked, in terms of rod and reel combos for distance casting, what would you recommend from the options out there in the market and why? So many different options on products now, it's hard to know what's good.
Say again, I'm sorry.
So in terms for rod and reel combos for distance casting, what would you go for as a general rule?
Thing is, you can spend £400 on a long distance rod, right? Long distance carp rod, and you could probably buy a cheap spod rod for £100 that would cast just as far and is the same stiffness. So yeah, it's not about how much you're going to spend, but ultimately a stiff rod that's lightweight, because obviously the heavier the rod, the harder it is to move. People forget that. If you've got a heavy rod, it's hard to move it fast, and tip speed is just as important as compression. So you want a light, stiff rod and a reel with a big spool, so you're getting bigger coils of line come off. So yeah, and you can do that at any price point. Like I think I could go out there and pick a rod for £100, and definitely a reel for £100, and I could cast that as far as I could, one with £500 rod and a £500 reel. So yeah, there's 101 different types of ways that you could do it, mix and match different reels and stuff. But a big spooled reel with a stiff light rod, and they're the combos with thin line. Thin line makes the real difference for casting range.
Yeah. Max has asked tips for targeting specific fish. About to target the only 40 at my local lake. I mean, is it possible to do that?
It isn't. It isn't. To be honest, my style involves just catching as many as possible, and the lower the stock, the quicker the big uns come. That's just law of averages. If you're fishing a lake full of small ones, and you just fish boilies, your average size will generally be bigger on boilies, because if you fish particle versus boilies just, they catch less sometimes, but they catch bigger. But yeah, you can learn the habits of a fish and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it is hearsay. Because fish are always doing new things. They're going into areas of the lake because that year the weed's grown there, or that year something's good about that area. Things are always evolving in the fish's environment, and always changing. And that fish only gets caught from here, and this fish, it's all rubbish. And I love it when I go on a lake and all the locals say this fish only gets caught here. I just block it out and just fish, catch them. Boilies will catch you better than average size, but if you put particles in front of the big ones, you'll catch them as well. So yeah, I would just say catch.
Like, as a general rule, I guess we were having this discussion. Like, it is the luck of the draw to a degree. What fish comes along and takes your bait? Because when I've flown the drone around, like the other day, I was flying it around. I saw a nice fish. Next to it, there was one twice as big. Any of them could have taken a bait.
Generally, bigger fish not always, be easier to catch than the smaller fish, generally. So, not always, the Burfield Common, big exception to the rule, but as a general rule, big fish tend to be greedy. They're more prone to eating, that's why they're big.
We'll do a few more, and then we'll do the last Fox Micron presentation set. We'll give away that. We have had a few people join us, so do you want to just run through
next month's giveaway?
Yeah, just do that again. So those of you as well that were expecting to see Tom Maker tonight, he's going to be with us next Wednesday. Couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately.
This Wednesday or next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday, yeah. This coming Wednesday.
Coming Wednesday, yeah.
Because obviously we've got all the Fox stuff here, and we've got the sticky stuff, which is he's all kind of tied to. So and that's why we wanted him here tonight to announce the winners and things like that. But he will be here next Wednesday. So if you've got any questions for him, then you can email them to info@carpfix.tv. That'll give you a better chance of us reading them out. Or we'll do a pre-registration page on CarpFix on the website, where you can also just leave your question in the comments box. Just fire away, mate.
Okay, so this month, obviously, we're giving away 3 Mini Micron X presentation sets, and therefore people that have been a member during the month of May and were still active on the last day of May. So if you are a member in June and still an active member on the last day of June, you are automatically entered into July's prize draw, which takes place in the live, and 5 separate people will win themselves 5 kilos of the Krill Active Freezer Bait in 16mm, the Krill Active Tough Ones in 16mm, the Krill Active Wafters in 16mm, Peach and Pepper Pop-Ups in 12mm, Peach and Pepper Bait Spray, and the Pure Calanus.
Yeah, we won't even try.
Calanus.
Yeah. It's a liquid.
It's a fishy liquid.
We showed it earlier.
Yeah. It's 5 people will win those bundles, and they're each worth just under £90. So nice giveaway, just as a little touch that we like to do for our members.
Yeah.
Right, next question is getting a tub of pop-ups, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. It's a different kind of question as well. It's from Leon. So he's
not Leon Bartrop.
No, Leon Hatch. He's asked this via the app, and he's asked, Darrell, if you were made to fish with one other person and you could only fish with that person for the rest of your life, who would you pick and why?
Oh, that's a toughie.
Yeah.
He's got his pop-ups, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, I've got that.
He's got who to fish with. Oh, yeah, real tough one. It'd have to be Derek Harrison, I think.
I thought you might say someone like that.
Yeah, what I love best about Derek is he's always happy, whereas I'm quite often stressy. maybe don't show it, but if it isn't going right, I want it to go right. I'm quite intense underneath, whereas he is always very relaxed, always pleased to be on the bank, and he's just a joy to be around. Loves a beer. I love a beer. So yeah, probably be old Derek.
Nice. So Lee has asked, evening Darrell, I only get to fish 24 to 48 hours at a time. I'm always worried about leading about too much to find a spot, as I don't want to spook the swim, to which I feel I'm not always on the right spot. So would you say it's better to spend more time trying to find that spot? Does that make sense?
Yeah, he's basically saying that in a short session that he's hesitant to lead around.
Yeah.
And it is all venue dependent and can be time of year dependent. In the summer, for example, the fish are moving so much that you're going to make a load of disturbance and then they're going to swim back into your swim anyway, like a lot of the time, depending on the venue. So there is no general rule, but yeah, opportunity fishing is one of my favourite ways to fish in the spring. Quite minimal disturbance, just getting out where they are, fishing for drops. But as the weed comes up and stuff, you can't. If you're fishing a weedy lake, you've got to be on the right spot. It's no good if it's not. So it's situation dependent. But doing your homework, if you're fishing the same venue all the time, then spending time at the end of your sessions, leading around, putting the wrap distances in, like drawing, like taking pictures of swim, put a little, like mark your pictures with like you can on WhatsApp, like make a little marker on the trees and that, and write it into your notes, how many wraps, what tree, and that stuff is vital. When I was young, I would have remembered everything, but now I only remember the stuff when I catch. If I catch, I'll never forget it. But if I haven't caught, those spots still come good sometimes. And the amount of times I've gone into a swim and thought, there's a nice spot out there, the fish are there, and I can't remember it. I can't remember the wrap. So do your homework when you can, because it will pay out in the end.
Nice.
Oh,
nice. Steve has asked, with Darrell being stopped in Bedfordshire,
What?
any heads up in the lake you might be going? I don't know what he means by that.
What's he say?
He's asked, with Darrell being stopped in Bedfordshire, any heads up on the lake you might be going?
Literally no idea what you're talking about there. Someone did say on a comment on one of the social medias, like Bedfordshire next. Basically, I think there's a big linear that's sort of turned up in a lake round there, that a lot of the big fish fraternity are going to fish for. But yeah, no plans.
Have you ever fished core cuts or pump house?
I've been to core cuts.
Pump house is the one in that industrial estate, isn't it?
I don't think I have fished it. No, I might have
He's
been
asking
there.
for any tips on those as well.
No, I've not fished them.
Okay. Owen has asked, hi Pecky, congrats on the recent captures. Oh no, we've done that one already. Apologies. We're repeating ourselves there.
That's all right. A lot of high fives.
Yeah. What is the best? This is from Ben. What is the best carp fishing book you have read and why?
Oh, mate, it's the Bible, isn't it? It's
be.
In Pursuit of the Largest. Have we got a copy of it here?
Yeah.
I don't think you've got one, have you?
I don't know.
Yeah, In Pursuit of the Largest is the best carp book ever. I don't care what anyone says. It's the passion, the stories. It's so. Yeah, it's my favourite book. You speak to anyone that's been, it's I'm not having it. If anyone wants to disagree with me, I'm going to tell them you're wrong. That's the best.
Right, let's do the draw, and then I'll get a couple more questions, and then we'll call it a day.
Perfect.
Yeah. So.
Last set of buzzers.
Yeah. So we've given away 2 already. One was to Daniel Hitchins, the other one was to Wesley Skeels, which you can see his name on there. So all we're going to do, everyone's name's in this randomizer. I'm just going to click the button, and then that is the next winner. Simple as that. Ready? James Timon.
Well done, James. Set a mini Micron X presentation set.
So I'm just going to make a quick note of James, and then that's that. Let me get my little questions up. Any recommendations on rigs when using barbless hooks in very weedy lakes? That's from Stuart.
I'm going to have to say the combi multi-rig.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used it at Bluebell on the Kingfisher Lake, barbless hooks, fishing under the trees. Fished farriers on the mainline video, the Carp Project. Farriers, really weedy, barbless hooks, no problem.
Kieran has asked, do you find when zig fishing that spodding over zigs provokes more of a feeding response and it improves takes, or is it lake stock dependent? Is it something that you do, and if so, when?
To be honest, I tend not to fish lakes where the carp come to the spawn. You know, carp come to the spawn on very densely populated lakes. So on somewhere like Brasenose, many of the linear lakes, there's a few, you know, when Thorpe Lee rings a bell. But if there's lots and lots of carp in there, then they tend to like the spawn, and they come to the cloud, and it can generate fast takes. But on the lower stock lakes, any form of angling pressure, they're just not having it, and they just disappear. So yeah, it is stock dependent.
Cool. I think that is it. I think we are time up. We have to have some time off. So we'll call it a day for now. As we said earlier, we'll be back on Wednesday with Tom Maker.
Back on Wednesday with Tom
and
Maker.
We'll
the Shaker.
So if you've got any questions, then fire them over, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good night.
See you soon.
See you soon.